So, I've been dreading this. The Netflix Daredevil is one of my favorite shows of all time, and my relationship with Daredevil Born Again Season 1 was, well, it was rough. I made a video on the first 2 episodes and planned to make a video on the season as a whole, but I literally just couldn't bring myself to do it with how disappointed I was. It didn't feel fun to criticize, it didn't feel fun to analyze, it just kind of broke me. I had zero energy to put into a thorough critique of a season that felt like a Frankenstein mess of procedural leftovers and last-minute course corrections. But then, Season 2 arrived. Well, just the first episode. I'm not one of those reviewers that was able to see the entire season early. Unless Disney wanna hook me up real quick. But I went in with very little expectations because I heard the early critic reviews saying the first few episodes were a little slow and messy, but that it eventually locks in and rivals or even exceeds the quality of some of the original parts of the Netflix version. And after sitting through this first episode, I have a very strange, very unfamiliar feeling regarding the MCU. Guys, I think I'm actually excited. Well, let's get into it. The biggest thing I noticed immediately is the lack of a creative overhaul. Season 1 felt like a battle between 2 different versions, but this premiere feels clean. It feels like the showrunners Dario Scartapane and the team of Benson and Moorhead finally got to build something from scratch rather than trying to fix someone else's mistakes. Let's talk about the technical side first, because that's a big part of the soul of Daredevil. The lighting, the framing, the cinematography, everything feels so much more intentional here. Now, I'll be honest, it still doesn't quite have that perfect Netflix look yet. There's still this slightly weird, foggy, hazy lens flare thing happening where some scenes feel a little overlit, but overall it's a massive improvement. They're using the camera to tell the story again. I, for instance, love the use of Dutch angles during the Heather Glenn scenes to signify her growing delusions with Machuw, or the handheld, shaky scenes with Matt and Karen. These are simple filmmaking techniques, but it's something that was missing from the flat visuals of the previous season. And I think they brought back the film grain too. I think it's kind of subtle, but it adds that layer of griminess to New York that makes it feel like a noir drama again. Season 1 was way too clean, way too polished, but this feels like a city that actually has shadows and drama and intrigue. But the next victory here is the characters. I am so relieved to see side characters who actually have dimensions again. Take Kirsten McDuffie for example. She had maybe like 3 scenes in this episode and she's already miles better than she was in the entirety of the first season. Feels like she actually has a purpose of being here. She isn't just somebody standing next to Matt or being some quickie comedic sidekick in the background. Feels like she's an active participant in the story. Like we learn she has siblings, we see that she has integrity, morals, and we see her office for the first time. It's just little things like that that just make a character a character. And then there's Cherry, the most universally hated person in Daredevil Born Again. I also hated Cherry last season. He felt useless, kind of annoying, and kind of like a filling space for Detective Mahoney, who I miss so badly. But in this one episode, they did him so much better. Like we see his heart condition, we see his apartment, we see photos of his family. Like these tiny 10-second details add up to make a character feel like a human being. During that final fight scene in the apartment, I actually found myself caring. I didn't want Cherry to die, which is crazy. I wasn't indifferent anymore, and that's the power of just good writing. Speaking of the writing, I have to talk about how they're handling the death of Foggy. Season 1 felt like a little bit of a forced, cheap shock tactic. Like I get they had no choice but to kill him off because he didn't even exist in the original version, so this was the only way to make Foggy actually work. But even after he died, I felt like there was really no drama around it, but here it feels like Matt is carrying the weight that it deserved. Watching Matt reminisce with Karen, who I'm so glad is back in a lead role that feels natural, but the trauma is visible. There's this incredible parallel during the fight where Cherry's having a heart attack and Matt is listening to his heartbeat. It's this amplified, terrifying callback to when Matt was listening to Foggy's heartbeat while he was fighting Dex, but now because of what happened to Foggy, that sound like triggers him, he can't focus, he's paralyzed by the fear that he can't protect the people he loves. This sets up a character arc that he's dealing with that trauma. It's a character flaw, it's conflict, drama, and tension. It's simple, but it works very effectively. Now let's talk about the action. First, the boat sequence. That's where you see the Disney budget actually being used for good. The boat sinking, Matt diving into the water, it felt high stakes and high scale in a way that Netflix shows couldn't always afford. They didn't lose the style in the process either. Like there's this cool shot of Daredevil's shadow appearing in the background by this criminal and just little stuff like that. I love seeing. The choreography is very well executed, the action scenes feel brutal, and not like forced brutal either. In season 1, there are a few scenes where it just feels kinda over the top for the sake of it, like when Wilson Fisk popped Gallows' head open like a watermelon. It kind of felt like the show was trying too hard to prove it was adult. It felt performative in a sense. In this episode, the violence made me squeamish, but in a good way, the way the Netflix shows did. It feels natural to the world and like the stakes are actually dangerous. I also want to point out how good the world building feels too. Benson and Moorhead and the set designers have this really cool hands-on approach to New York that I just love. I read that they actually had film students go out and record real New Yorkers giving their unfiltered opinions on, the Fisk administration, which, isn't real of course, and the martial law in the city, using the BB reports really give the show a nice authenticity. It personifies a location, making New York not just feel like a backdrop, but a character that's reacting to the politics of the show. The parallels to what's happening in the real world right now are very obvious, and even though a lot of this was written a while ago, it feels incredibly timely. Watching Daredevil navigate a city that is actively opposing a corrupt, fascist administration feels like the classic street-level stakes that make this character work best. Then there's Machuw Lillard. Seeing him show up as Mr. Charles is a really cool wild card. I love when these shows integrate original characters who don't exist in the comics. It's one of the reasons why I love Agent Ray Nadeem from season 3 of the OG show. Like, I can't go on a Wikipedia page to see what happens to him or a YouTube video. Like, there's no theory videos that can kind of definitively or kind of clue you in where this character is going to go. Machuw Lillard is playing him with this nonchalant, cocky energy that is really cool to see. Seeing someone act that way towards Wilson Fisk, someone who isn't intimidated by him, creates a really fascinating dynamic. I have no idea where they're taking him, and that mystery is part of what makes me want to just see more of him. Again, I hear those early critics are saying the first half of the season is a little slow, but if this is the slow or messy part, then I think we're in for a really good season of television. Because if this is the worst the show is going to be, then the bar, I think, is set pretty high. It's funny, watching the previously on recap at the beginning of the episode honestly just reminded me how much I really disliked season 1. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it was just so fine and bland that it left a bad taste in my mouth. But so far, even just with this one episode at season 2, it feels like we're really locking in. The pacing is tight, the dialogue feels grounded, the cinematography is much better, and I'm just excited. There are a few things that I still need to see in the future that didn't exist in the first season. Mainly Matt's religion. That's such a major part of his character that was largely glanced away from in the first season. Matt constantly grapples with his faith, and it's something that is integral to him. I need the long, dramatic monologues, the religious imagery, and Matt simply being in a church again, but there's plenty of time to get back into that, of course. Another thing I'm not super fond of is that Matt and Karen get back together off screen. They were always like the endgame couple to me, but throughout the series they've had a pretty unhealthy relationship, built off lies with Matt not treating her very well, then all of a sudden they're just together again, but hopefully they take their relationship with an interesting angle. Last thing, Foggy is definitely alive. I think they're going to do the prison arc by the end of the season, and then Foggy will be revealed to be alive in the last few minutes, and you'll read a newspaper about Matt being thrown in prison or something, and then Elektra will also come back, and that's gonna be what season 3 is. If I'm wrong, then well, I'll cry. I'm just sad that they brought back the wrong Foggy, and the show looks kinda off sometimes, but overall I'm still really happy with where we're at right now. I really hope the second half of the season keeps this momentum, but who knows? Maybe I'll be a contrarian and only like the first half and hate the second half. But those are just my thoughts on the premiere. Did you guys feel the same way? Did you think the improvement was as massive as I did, or are you still feeling the season 1 sting? Whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to know them all in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. Peace.